For your ears only for the week of November 4th and Election Day, I'm David Alpern.
I'm Melissa Exelberth.
Every time you have an occasion to take something from the federal government and send it back to the states, that's the right direction.
Right.
And if you can go even further and send it back to the private sector, that's even better.
We have pre-positioned assets so that FEMA personnel are working closely with state and local governments.
I cannot thank the President enough for his personal concern and compassion for our state and for the people of our state.
The historic devastation of Hurricane Sandy on the eve of the presidential election forced GOP standard-bearer Mitt Romney to back off his primary debate declaration that the role of the Federal Emergency Management Administration should be handed back to the states or private companies and philanthropy, but not before the storm gave President Obama an opportunity to demonstrate leadership under pressure that won unexpected praise from previously critical New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, a prominent Romney surrogate. Still, the storm also left huge problems for actual voting in its wake, raising questions about the accuracy of late polls showing the two candidates tied nationally, but with Obama ahead in some key firewall states, most notably Ohio.
The president also got good and bad news from the final economic reports before voting. A better-than-expected 171,000 jobs added in October, but unemployment ticking back up to 7.9%, likely because more Americans had re-entered the job market. There were also positive consumer confidence and spending statistics, and a report by the nonpartisan Congressional Research Service that showed no connection between lower top tax rates and economic growth, as promised by Romney, before it was withdrawn under criticism by the GOP senators. It has the hues of a banana republic, said New York's Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer. To consider all of this, for your ears only, we're joined again by Princeton Professor of History and Public Affairs, Julian Zelizer, author of Jimmy Carter and Governing America. Welcome back to our program.
Thanks for having me.
On balance, how do you see Sandy affecting the election? Praise for Obama's performance versus difficulties in voting in the worst affected areas, many disadvantaged and Democratic?
I think overall, though, it will help President Obama. He didn't stumble on any of the relief efforts. He picked up support from Mayor Bloomberg of New York and even an appearance with Governor Christie. But most important, Mitt Romney lost a lot of airtime. He lost the last week of the election, and I think he's had trouble getting some of his message out there at a time he had a lot of momentum.
And as far as employment, both sides were spinning the final jobs reports. How do you see them actually affecting the vote?
I think it affects it only in that it confirms where we are with the economy. Slow improvement, moderate improvement, but overall it's a laggard economy with high rates of unemployment and low rates of security. So I think both sides are spinning it the way they want because it's a somewhat neutral report that just confirms where we were last month. Certainly it doesn't make things better for President Obama. It's not a jump in the numbers that he would want. But I don't think it hurts him that much other than how people are already feeling about their economic fortunes.
What about the backlash against Romney TV ads saying that Obama's bailout of the auto industry was now leading to a shift of U.S. jobs to China when it's actually a plan for new jobs there to build cars for Asian buyers? Too late to make much difference either way?
Yeah, too late. But it's always been an issue that is vulnerability for Mitt Romney. You know, he said his criticism about the bailout in a way that has come back to haunt him, and it certainly might hurt him in places like Ohio, where we're still seeing a lot of working and middle-class Americans are not fully comfortable with him and think Obama is more on their side, and the bailout itself is a symbol of what Obama's tried to do.
Well, what do you make of the firewall argument that Obama winning Ohio would undercut Romney's chances for any other route to the required Electoral College majority?
Well, that's been true for a long time, and that's part of why, even with the fluctuations in the polls, many people think Obama will win in the end. Basically, you have a few swing states, and Romney has to win almost all of them, and Obama doesn't. So Romney's been struggling to move uphill. The only saving grace would be if he can win some other states that aren't swing states, make inroads in places he wasn't expected to. We're seeing a little of that in Pennsylvania right now. But it's very hard. The math is formidable for Mitt Romney to win this election.
And what likelihood do you see for one man winning in the Electoral College but losing the popular vote?
That we could see. If the polls, again, I don't know what the polls are today. I don't know what the polls are in the aftermath of the storm. But if they were approximately where they were a week ago, that could happen. And then you have a president, it could be President Obama in the White House, with the perception, like after 2000, that he didn't have national support. And that will further undercut him politically in a term that is likely to be pretty brutal in terms of getting legislation.
And how do you see the government functioning after an electoral college tie if the House makes Romney president and the Senate keeps Joe Biden as Veep?
Well, I don't think that will be the outcome. I don't think it's likely. But if that happened, I think it would be a difficult situation. We're already in this very polarized era of American politics where neither side, Republican or Democrat, agree with much. There's very little room for compromise. And ultimately, if you have the government itself deciding the election and deciding to have one of each, I think it would create a situation that's quite difficult and create a lot of tension in Washington.
Will the conservative House Republicans prove problematic for Romney as president if he really wants to work with Democrats as he pledges?
Absolutely. If they win, if Romney wins the White House, many conservatives will feel they are the reason he won, that ultimately they got behind him, they weren't comfortable with him, but they pushed for him, and they're going to want payback. They're going to want him to be loyal once he's in the White House. And Romney is going to have very different incentives. He's going to want to win re-election. He's going to want to get some big compromises done early in, and he's going to want to write them out, as he has in much of the general election. So I think it will be as hard for him as it was for Obama to figure out how to deal with them.
We've talked politics, but let's go back to Sandy logistics. Can you see the military providing significant support and therefore some sort of control over actual voting in places where there's still no power? There's been talk of them providing generators, helping to get the polls up and running.
I think they might have to. Again, in an era with such polarization, the last thing you want is any question of the legitimacy of the vote. And there are places in New York and New Jersey and some other states where elections will be difficult, especially where you have electronic voting. So if the Army has the resources to bring power back to communities, why not? If we've been trying to do that in other countries in the Middle East, we should at least be able to ensure our elections here function smoothly.
Princeton Professor of History and Public Affairs Julian Zelizer. His books include Jimmy Carter and Governing America.
Quote from the news, "It doesn't seem right to continue." That was a blogger on Mayor Michael Bloomberg's initial decision to hold the annual New York City Marathon just 5 days after Superstorm Sandy to boost morale and city revenues. Bloomberg later reversed himself, agreeing with critics that the race would divert much-needed resources and attention from all those still suffering.
And another quote, "She needs to do sign language interpreting for everything, everywhere, forever." That was a tweet admiring Lydia Callis, New York Mayor Bloomberg's eye-catching sign language interpreter for press conferences during Superstorm Sandy.
Next, a professional view of disaster response to Sandy for your ears only. Quote from the news, "It doesn't seem right to continue." That was a blogger on Mayor Bloomberg's initial decision to hold the annual New York City Marathon just 5 days after Superstorm Sandy to boost morale and city revenues. Bloomberg later reversed himself, agreeing with critics that the race would divert much-needed resources and attention from all those still suffering.
And another quote, "She needs to do sign language interpreting for everything, everywhere, forever." That was a tweet admiring Lydia Callis, New York Mayor Bloomberg's eye-catching sign language interpreter for press conferences during Superstorm Sandy.
Next, a professional view of disaster response to Sandy for your ears only.